Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good evening, and good night, everyone, because I know that we have people joining us from all over the world in different time zones, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to listen and join us in this discussion on how artificial intelligence is going to change the future of education and the way we learn. Joining us today is Dr. Andreas Karatsolis. Please, Professor, if I'm butchering your name, just let me know. Professor Karatsolis is the interim director of writing, rhetoric, and professional communications, also known as RAP, at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, commonly known as MIT, a program that supports the communication needs of all graduate and undergraduate MIT students. His disciplinary training includes a PhD in rhetoric and communication with an emphasis on technical and professional practices in science related fields, which is at the core of his teaching and research efforts. In his administrative role at MIT for the past 11 years, he has designed curricula and tools that integrate disciplinary knowledge with lifelong habits of learning and reasoning, an effort which led to RAP being considered as a program of excellence in 2022 by the National Council of Teachers of English. As a researcher, Dr. Karatsolis has also been the lead or co-principal investigator in multi-million funded projects related to the design, implementation, and assessment of learning frameworks and tools, especially in the domains of language and learning, professional communication, and also scientific discourse. This research has led to the development of workshops and seminars for faculty and administrators in 3 continents on areas such as curriculum integration and assessment, academic and workplace communication, and outcomes based on educational policy. This is the summarized version of your CV, Professor Karatsolis. I had
Thank you.
to trim it down a lot. On the other side, we have John's son. John is an overall really nice guy and also the global marketing manager of DeepBrain AI. John has been instrumental in advancing AI technologies across various industries, and his expertise in business development and marketing provides a unique perspective on how to leverage AI for educational purposes, which is the topic that we're going to discuss today. And for those of you wondering, my name is Gabriel de la Rosa. I'm a principal at Intelligent Relations, and I will be your humble moderator for the evening. Funny story, we tried having Scarlett Johansson, as the voice of the webinar, but she refused. Apparently, she doesn't like AI anymore. Go figure. And I'm going to ask these two very esteemed gentlemen some questions, and I'm going to start with the both of you, actually. I'm going to start first with Professor Karatsolis, and I'm going to ask the same question to John as well. Very simple and very easy to answer as well, because I'm going to throw some softball as first. Is AI good or bad for education? Some context here. AI has been either banned or we have experts all over the world trying to ban it in several levels of education, from kids in school all the way to the university. That's the first question for you both. The second question is, I'm technically paying, full disclosure, I'm technically paying for my nephews and nieces ChatGPT account. Does that make me a bad uncle? I don't know. That's the second question. You don't have to answer that. But is AI good or bad for education? Let's start with Professor Karatsolis.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Gabriel. Um, so this is a question that hasn't really been answered yet sufficiently, at least at MIT. Like you said, there are many different responses, from a total ban all the way to people encouraging the use of AI. However, I would say my personal response is that generative AI has tremendous potential to be able to allow more efficient work to be done in education in certain areas and answering certain types of questions. One of the things that I talk to my students about is that you have different types of questions that you're trying to address, especially if you're creating new knowledge with your research. Some of these might be questions of fact, not necessarily facts, but questions of fact, like, did something happen, right? And generative AI tools are very good at this information from different sources and answering these questions of fact very quickly. Similarly, questions of definition, what do we mean when we say X? Generative AI can very quickly collect a lot of this information and do that work. But when it comes to very complex questions of value, is something better than something else, and policy, what should we do? That's where you need humans to be able to make decisions. And for better or worse, generative AI at this point, from what we've seen, is not able to generate good answers or resolve these types of more complex questions. So, for knowledge creation purposes, it is limited. That's my, you know, more diplomatic answer. It has great potential, but right now it doesn't do the kind of work that we would like it to do at this high knowledge creation level.
I
Okay.
was expecting a yes or no answer, Professor Karatsolis.
Well,
More straightforward. I'm sorry, John. John, please.
Yeah. Well, to start with, nice to meet you, everyone. I'm John from DeepBrain AI. And to answer your question, I would have to explain what DeepBrain AI does a little bit. DeepBrain AI is a generative AI company. We specialize in AI avatars. So, what Professor tried to explain here would be the neural part of actually creating content and educating, whereas DeepBrain AI, with our technology, we want to act as a gateway to humanity and AI as well. The AI technology itself is continuously evolving. We'll see a bright future there where AI can actually educate people and help people out on their own. But at the moment, I think we need something like an AI avatar to help out maneuver the knowledges and transfer it to human as a gateway. And that's what we think we're good at, and that's what we're trying to do. And when it comes to education, I think it's more crucial to have a figure in the middle to act and work through as a gateway. And that's what we're trying to do in the recent years. So I hope this partially answered your question.
That's the start of it. But this would be an interesting webinar if we wouldn't be able to delve into the more controversial stuff. So this is a double-sided question, and I want to know how AI can enhance education, how AI can help the way we learn and how we can learn better. But I also want to discuss the elephant in the room and see the pitfalls to avoid and how AI can actually be detrimental to education as well. So I'm going to start with the good side, and then we're going to slowly lean into the bad side, and finally how we can counteract the bad part of it. So I'm going to start again with Professor Karatsolis, and
mhm.
then I'm going to go back to John as well.
So AI can be extremely useful for the purposes of being able to capture information in ways that humans wouldn't be able to do quickly and efficiently themselves. So, if I'm writing a literature review, let's say, as a student, and I
Mhm.
want to understand what the state of the art is in a specific field for a specific question, and I ask a generative AI tool, it can do a lot of this work for me, but not necessarily in a way that is going to be immediately usable, right? It can give me a lot of the sources, the main arguments, what people have said, what people have found, but then I have to come in and start seeing how it fits with the kind of question that I have, the kind of argument that I'm trying to make. So I see it more as a synergy between the human and the AI that will eventually give us the greatest gains. Similarly, if we think about collaborative systems, right? The idea of being able to go back and forth, I think, will be crucial. It's not just a one way thing where you ask the generative AI, or let's say the agent comes and gives you the information and then you're done, right? The idea of having the dialogue as a dialogic system, and through the dialogue be able to get to the answers that you need, I think is also going to be crucial. So dialogic synergy, if I want to use big words here.
Okay, now let's go to John. John, I know that you are a staunch defender of AI in education. How can AI enhance it?
I really liked Andreas's dialogic term because that's what we think is important as well. Because we do AI avatars, and our avatar's ability to basically read out the text as if it's really speaking it. If we add language models, recently large language model has been a hot topic, and it becomes conversational. So you can have face-to-face conversations with an avatar, with a knowledge-based fact with an LLM. Recent ages, I think we need to be smart on how we use the not perfect at the moment, AI at the moment. So one of the ways that we try to leverage our AI avatars and the AI into one of our education application, which we called Speak Now, it's a conversational app. It's a conversational app. It was an app for Koreans to practice their English, but to learn a language, practicing is a very crucial thing. You have to speak out a lot, have conversations a lot, listen a lot, and that's what improves your language. And with our Speak Now product, we've been able to have people talk to the AI as much as they want, wherever they want. And now it's possible because the avatar and the chatbot and the LLMs are linked together. It will be just like talking to a random person. So long story short, what I think is at the moment, we have a bright future, but we're not there yet. But we have to think smart. We have to leverage what we have at the moment most. And to do that, I think understanding the limitations and leveraging it would be better for us to make a good use case of AI in education.
Right. I think John is onto something very important here, and that's the idea of being able to use some of these tools as intelligent tutors. So what's the
Mhm.
goal of education? Like if you want to say, is it good for education? You have to figure out what the goal is. And in early years, in early childhood, let's say, a lot of it has to do with social emotional development, which is not necessarily coming out of reading textbooks and memorizing information and understanding, when things happen in history or whatever. That's where you need more one-to-one attention. That's where you need someone to essentially interact with and have this dialogic relationship be built in. For scale purposes, it's not easy to have pre-K classrooms with 11 teachers and 15 students so that we can do this kind of work, but it might make more sense to have opportunities for the students to interact with systems that will allow them to have these kinds of conversations, explorations, whatever it is that's going to help them build these kinds of social, emotional, cognitive development.
I
I'm gonna
do
add
just want
to that
one.
point, if I may, because I've seen, and I don't know. To be frank, I don't know how to feel about it because I've seen several studies that have gone out ever since ChatGPT hit mainstream, and two come to mind. One in education in the states, and the other one was actually very popular. That one was done in the healthcare space, and one of the things that people value the most about not AI in general, but specifically about LLMs like ChatGPT is the fact that ChatGPT it doesn't lose its temper when it's trying to teach you something. And we've seen that, for example, with doctors, they did this study where they have doctors respond to queries from patients via email, and we had on one side the human physicians, and on the other you have another sample of patients that got responses from ChatGPT, and the ones that got responses from ChatGPT actually mentioned that the things that they like the most is the fact that they thought that they were getting more empathetic answers from ChatGPT than the ones that they got from the doctors. So I don't know how to feel about this, because I do think that human interaction is, believe it or not, important. And I think that the fact that you be able to get a different array of answers, from a human being, especially when you are in that development stage, is also fundamental to the way that you navigate the world. John, I don't know if you have something to say about that.
Yes,
You
of
can put
course.
these feelings to rest.
Well, it's a legit comment. I really do think it's somewhere that AI in general has to evolve eventually. But actually, having that interaction, constant interaction, is a big selling point for our products as well. Because being an AI, you don't show like different emotions. You have a constant, calm, informative um, reaction. And that's one of the reasons, well, it's a little apart from education, but we have lots of business cases with banks. Banks are using our AI avatars as AI bankers to instruct basic information that it's been bothering the actual bankers for the longest. And the AI will do the general information delivery, whereas the actual bankers can empower themselves to do actual human work. Um, the wording might sound a little awkward, but the bankers do what they do best at, and the basic inquiries, AIs can deliver quicker, faster, and more accurate. I think it's the matter of how you control the data and what you deliver. At current situation, we can do that. So that's something that we're working a lot with B2B customers. And back to the education part, the conversational part, where we had an app called Speak Now. We had another case with an education tutor service called Q1. Their basic business model was to go tutoring to homes. During the pandemic, they weren't able to do that. They had to quickly change the business model, and that's one of the reasons they started to work with us. They create an avatar, tutor avatar within the app. They get personalized information, calling out names, basic evaluation, and giving feedbacks. So giving out general information is something that we can do already, and it's how it should be used for at the moment. But I'm pretty sure this will evolve. One more thing I do want to add was the case with Q1. With our AI avatar technology, you can basically replicate. You can actually have this real person created into an avatar. And so what Q1 did was, and this Q1 app is for elementary school students, we brought a very famous creator called Toti. He's a YouTuber. He's very famous within their age era. We created him as an avatar, and him being the teacher increased engagement, interest, and concentration. And this is something that we expected and wanted, but after seeing the actual result, it was more greater than what we expected. So this is something, another way we can actually leverage our AI technologies into education as well. That's what I wanted to add.
So what you're saying, John, is that we should find a way to clone Mr. Beast and have him teach in elementary school. Can that make
Well,
kids, more
I
engaged?
would, I would not use that word, but to empower the actual person. So we're not trying to replace a human. There are still
Mhm.
limitations of AI, but definitely there are ways to empower the actual person on substituting, helping. And that's what we're trying to do. And I'm seeing results, and I'm seeing that the possibilities are infinite at the moment.
I will also add to that, and this one is for John, and if you, Professor Karatsolis, feel free to pitch in as well. Uh, Personalization. The fact that I would say I've taught in both elementary and also all the way to university as well, and I would say that the best classes are the ones that are comprised by very few students, because I'm able to dedicate a lot of time to each one of them, and I'm also able to personalize the way that I teach and tailor the way that I teach curriculum to each and every one of them. So can AI help us get there in some way, especially in the way that you are describing?
I say yes and yes. One reason that I say yes is because the professors, let's just take Andreas, for example. He's a very busy person. He can't give feedbacks to every single person, but he has them in his mind. He wants to write a note to them. He wants to give a certain feedback to them. But a note or a certain delivery method would not like fulfill the students' needs. Maybe having a video message would encourage them more on towards achieving more. In that case, we can have Andreas created as an avatar and give personalized messages, because basically what the avatars do is they deliver. They're the presenter, and they can be the Andreas Junior, just for example. So that's one thing. But another case that we're actually having is with cyber universities, which is online universities, and the universities are trying to implement our technology in creating more online videos, presenting AI avatars, replicating or substituting the actual professors. By doing that, it not just extensively decreased cost in time, but it also provides the actual faculty, actual professor to input more time and effort to what they actually are good at, researching, providing more curriculums, providing more accurate information, and delivering them could be done with the AI avatars. So this is two different aspects I wanted to emphasize as a DeepBrain AI avatar company. But I think Andreas might have some other opinions about it as well.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hear from you, Professor. Will you be willing would you be willing to get okay, the world is not cloned. What would be the right word if we were to, imprint Professor Karatsolis' essence into an avatar so he can use it in his classes?
A digital replica that can help out the real Andreas, Professor Karatsolis.
Right. So I want to go back, and I have two big points here, but I want to go back to that idea of synergy, but also to the idea of how we can leverage capturing that expertise and being able to deploy it at much larger scale than having just one person be able to teach a class of 10, 15, 20, 50 students, right? So there are two things that are happening here. One is the idea of personalization and much more targeted learning, and having an experience for the students that specifically tries to meet their needs so that they can all find a way to the larger outcomes that we wanted to get at, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's easier if you have intelligent systems that are built to be attentive to the needs of students, and they're able to go back and see what their progress, what their progression has been, to give them that kind of targeted feedback. Right? It's not easy for somebody who's teaching, a faculty member, to always know exactly what the student is doing and or how they have been, working their way through. The second thing has to do with the credibility of a virtual professor versus the, physical real one. I mean, it sounds nice to have Andreas Jr. because this means that, I'm also going to be younger and, better looking or something like that. Right? That's the nice part of it. But you also want to be in the context of a culture of a place that values this new technology as something that's equal or better than the professor in their physical form, which again is a big leap for a lot of contexts. Education has traditionally been one of those places where change has been hard. And new technologies and new ideas in education take a long, long time to be adopted and implemented. And for better or worse, we still think along the lines of learning should be hard, otherwise it's not learning, right? It should not be fun. You should suffer for it. Now, once we start moving away from these older models of thinking about what learning is and what learning does, you can then see potentially people saying, maybe I'm not getting a better version of the physical teacher, but I'm getting a version that's been informed by the kinds of things this person would think, say, provide you feedback with, and so on and so forth. And I can do that multiple times and at will instead of trying to find that person once a week at their office hours.
Okay, I'm very satisfied by those answers, but we have to address the elephant in the room, and we have to talk about the dark side of AI in education. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to mention that, for example, something that John said, that when learning a language, and I will say learning in general, practicing is fundamental for learning. And the other part that I will mention, which I think AI could be interpreted as detrimental, will be memory. Sometimes you need to remember stuff. And when you don't feel the need to remember anything because you will always have this, let's say, assistant or avatar at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
I see a possibility that we lost Gabriel just
Yeah.
now.
I think that I lost you guys for a second. Okay. Anyways, so is AI detrimental to memory? Because now we don't really need to remember stuff.
It could be, but again, we go back to the same discussion that they had 2,500 years ago when writing was invented, and Plato said writing is detrimental to memory. The printing press is detrimental to memory, right? All of these are technologies that push us forward in different ways. The question is, how do we use them, and what kinds of essentially neural pathways do we want to maintain active, or we want to be building more? Now, if our options are we let generative AI do all the mental knowledge work for us, and we just sit in the back and watch, I don't know, TikTok videos or something that's kind of a mindless type of thing, then yes, it's probably detrimental. But if the option is, does it give us enough room to be able to do some other creative work, do some other type of thinking, do the kinds of things that are going to push us cognitively and even socially, emotionally, even more, then it might not be such a bad thing. So it's how we respond to it.
John, what do you think?
I agree with Andreas in the part where you learning should be hard. It should disturb you. You need to put in effort and time to actually acquire the knowledge. That's something I think that will never change. And one of the reasons we currently used our avatars to learn, practice, and repeatedly do uh, practice with our app. That's, I think, where we're seeing progress as well. Just to add a little bit, we're talking about creating. Let's just say using AI. Um, the AI does the creative part for us, which is a very brilliant thing. It's a very cool thing, but it's not always what I want it to be. So I think in the near future, the ability to generate prompts, which we can talk about for the whole next few hours again, but generating prompts, how we use AI avatars, it's also another skill set, I would say, a person would gather to manage and use the AI, the AI technology. So this is very open topic. We're learning through it. We're in the era where everything's new, everything's being tested out. But just want to emphasize that AI is doing good for us, but we need to take careful measures, and especially in the part of education, I think we personally need to take extra careful measures on doing that. But this is when we're talking about students. when we talk about corporate education, this is, I think, another thing. And that's why education institutions, they're very slower in adapting new technologies because they need to be careful. They need to see many use cases. That's why only proven cases are implemented in an actual education era. But corporations are different. They want effectiveness. They want to have efficiency in creating materials and everything. They already have a whole bunch of manuals, texts that's already there, and they wanted to create that into videos, which is more engaging and more effective in transforming knowledge, the basic knowledges. So corporate education sectors have already started to adopt this technology to provide their instructional materials to their employees, and it's proven that it's working. It's something that we can continue with. I think in the near future, education sector will also see the kind of move and maybe partially start to adopt the technology as well.
Right. So just to add something here, I agree with John that a lot of it is context specific.
Mhm.
And I think that the danger would be to try to kind of equate all these different contexts. Here's an example. If you have good AI tools that allow you to translate across languages, right? And we already have, even like on your phone, tools that allow you to have basic translations of, where do I find the taxi and where's the nearest restaurant types of things. Does this mean that we should never even consider learning a second language? And
Mhm.
does this mean that even if we learn a second language, we shouldn't even bother understanding what the culture behind that language is that gives rise to these concepts? Uh, I'm part of a UNESCO team. It's called the Chair, that has to do with translating cultures, right? So, what do we do when we go across, let's say, between China and the Arab world? How do we translate some concepts that are completely new or foreign? And how do we create opportunities for people to start thinking differently about each other? I mean, these are very important questions that a simple AI translation tool might not be able to really give you the right answers because they're looking at things at the discourse or at the word level, right?
Hmm.
So again, it has to do with us recognizing the context that it can be useful for our needs, and then opening up other contexts where we can start thinking deeper and more, let's say, in a more integrated way about the kinds of questions we have at hand that are much more meaningful and useful. And if that means that eventually we're going to be, I don't know, learning 3 or 4 languages, but much more easily because the AI has done all the basic part for us, but then we can start thinking about 3 or 4 different cultures, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm gonna give my 2 cents, and then we're going to go to the questions from the audience because we're getting a few. And I'm going to differ from I have a different opinion from John slightly, and I'm going to be very pretentious right now. John, you're going to hate me. I don't think that education should be hard, but I do think that perhaps the right word for me would be it has to be challenging, because life is more fulfilling when it's challenging, and education should be like that. And if AI can help us, can challenge us and keep us engaged as we learn, yeah, I completely agree. I don't like people trying to use AI as a way to bypass the effort that you need to put in. But I do think that if it can help us as a catalyst to get there faster and better, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And let's go to the questions. We have two very hard questions to answer. First, we have Daniela Bartoli. How do you feel grade school, middle school, and high school educational systems are adapting to and being receptive towards the use of artificial intelligence in their curricula and administrative processes. This question, I believe that this question is for you both, but I would like John to answer first because, John, I know that you have visibility not just on the educational system in the US, but also in Korea. And I know there are some cultural difference there that perhaps I will say, I will venture a guess, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Korean educational system has something that they could share with the US educational system that could help improve it.
Well, yes, I do have experience with both educational system. I personally lived abroad when I was young, so I experienced the U.S. Curriculums. But when I went back to Korea, I experienced the Korean curriculums. I think it's the way you react to new technology itself. It's not just AI, it's not anything else, but it's just how you react to new things. Korea is a country where it evolved very quickly. It developed its economic culture, like many aspects, very quickly. And we think that it was possible because we're adaptive to new things, new technologies, and acquire it very well. This has been same with education systems as well, corporations, of course, but we're currently working with some middle school and high schools, and um, we're working with them, with the school itself, to provide lectures to the students on how to use generative AI using our AI Studios platform. It's more of an easier way to start with because our AI Studios is an AI video generator where you input your script, you can design your video, and then you just export it, and then output it's a video. So it's a very good stepping stone into the AI industry and technology, and the schools are trying to leverage that. I personally think coding is now in many of the curriculums in every culture. Now it's
Yes.
something that we think it as a mathematic course. It's a coding course. I think it will eventually be like that in Korea very soon. Um, when I think about US, it's I think more conversational, more interactive communication is important, and a little bit more slower and cautious on adopting new technologies as well. So this is where we're trying to work our way through to introduce AI into school education, K through 12 as well, along with the university educations as well. I'm not sure if I completely answered the question, but in my perspective, it's the difference between how you adopt new technology and how you leverage it. Um, Korea, we're more like reactive, and we want to try new stuff. Basically, we want to be the early adapters. Is basically what I think of the Korean culture. I'm not trying to generalize everything, but that's what I personally think. Whereas in the US, I think it takes more time to enjoy and fully like leverage the new technologies. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the conversation about early adopters is very useful. Of course, there are early adopters in the US as well. There are some teachers, high school teachers, whatever, who are trying to look into the possibility of bringing generative AI into their classrooms. However, the threshold for the tolerance for uncertainty in the US and the education sector is not as high as it would be in Korea, I'd say. So people are very cautious of trying to use AI in their classrooms. There's also, I feel, a general sense of concern that you might be losing out on something when you bring in these support tools. And because a lot of the um, administrators don't necessarily want to see big changes coming from the teachers themselves or the combination of teacher student interaction, the curricula are pretty much set, right? They want to
Mhm.
make sure that they can maintain this structure of the curriculum, and they don't necessarily want to give more self-determination to teachers to bring in these kinds of technologies in. However, they will, right? It's going to happen, and the rate that it happens will also sometimes determine how many generations of students you get who come into higher education with a good understanding of how to leverage these tools, or with maybe no understanding, if people have said you absolutely cannot use this or cannot touch it for any reason.
In Spanish, we say you can't hide the sun under your thumb. You can't stop the way that society moves forward. We have, last but not least, this one is a minefield. You guys are going to have so much fun responding to this one. This is from Sarah. With many regulators zeroing in on AI, do you see new regulations as potentially stifling innovation in AI for education, or are more guardrails necessary? Should we regulate AI in education? Yes or no, basically.
All right, good one, Sarah. Uh, So we've had a few surveys here that my program did, because we work with a lot of MIT faculty, just to see how, in general, they felt about AI and what are the kinds of things that they would like to see happen in their classes. And for the most part, a lot of people want to really know more about it and see how it can help meet student learning outcomes. However, they are very concerned about issues of uh, equity in access, issues that have to do with um, sustainability. Let's say how, what is the cost essentially of being able to run all these things, and
Mhm,
potentially issues of what is going on into the information that you get, and do you actually receive um, accurate information, or information that's not biased in some way. So if we can say that we have systems that have been vetted in a way that, they're not biased, or they don't simply use certain subsets of data to produce answers and completely exclude other things, if we can ensure that, then it's difficult to start making claims about limiting access, and it's going to be very hard to do it too.
mhm,
Um, so I know the European Union, for example, was looking into that to start maybe putting some guardrails into who and what can do certain types of work with generative AI, but it was mostly for, I think, like biological ethics types of things,
mhm.
and I don't know, warfare and things of this sort, not for education so far, as far as I've seen.
That is correct. What's your opinion, John? Should we get regulators involved?
Yes and no. DeepBrainAI is a company, and as an entrepreneur perspective, regulations are not always the best to have, meaning it's somewhat more stricter. It's for the goodwill, but sometimes it's not used well. So I think um, it should be very carefully determined if it's an actual thing that we need to put it as a regulation, or would it be something that we should put out in the market saying this is a guideline we should follow. As an entrepreneur, I think the people like ourselves, like our Deep Brain AI, companies that's involving in generative AI, which should have more responsibility, and regulations could help in the general mass way, but um, I don't think it's not. I think it's not always the answer. So very cautiously, I would say no. But I also want to add that as a generative AI company, we've been like compared and discussed a lot with deepfake as well, which we completely think it's a different technology. But because
Mhm.
as a company, we do feel responsible, we do feel the big changes and abusing cases we see a lot in the market. We also created a deepfake detection technology where we can actually detect if this content was created by a deepfake technology or not. It includes voice, video, pictures, and everything. And this is actually currently being used with the police department in Korea as well to detect mass contents. We do on-premise procedures as well. So we're trying to take our ethical and measures, and we're also trying to take our responsibility at stake. We try our best to be the good guys in the market, but is regulation always the answer? I, sincerely speaking, am not sure.
Well, nobody asked me, but full disclosure, I'm Venezuelan. So when you grow on the dictatorship, you tend to be very suspicious of, you try not to hope politicians come in and fix your problems for you. So that's my stance on it. I think that they always, in best case scenario, regulators always coming too late. And I think that it would be better to have these kinds of conversations that we're having, and to help both good actors and bad actors accountable alike in any way that we can. So that's it. That's everything for today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. Thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you for you sending your questions. And yeah, as we say, also, oh, by the way, thank you, Heather, from our social media team, and Daniela Bartoli, because they made this puzzle, and also Estamaris. Thank you so much. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night, good evening, good night, and see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice talking to you guys.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you. Bye bye.